Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're moving on to a new chapter, and this chapter here is probably the one that is going to help you the most, and it's also the one that is going to probably cause you the most amount of kind of, I don't want to say frustration, but it's going to require some work on your part, because this is a method for thinking, a kind of like mental checklist that you are going to have to do after almost every move that your opponent makes, right? Because every move that your opponent makes changes the position. And so you're constantly going to have to be going through a kind of checklist in your head every time your opponent does something, right? And the good news is that with time, this becomes automatic, right? At least it's not as difficult as it would have been, let's say, when you first started, right? The more you do it, the more natural it will become, the more obvious it will become to you, the more you will see how this plays into almost every aspect of the game, right? So let's begin. So we're back with Morphy and the Duke, right? This famous opera game where he sacrificed his queen, except this time we're going to look at it from the black side, right? So we're going to look at it from the black side because there are some things here that are very instructive from what black did, right? So very often knowing what not to do is just as important as knowing what to do, right? So white played the move e4, black played e5, knight f3, d6, right? We said this is the Philidor defense, and then we recognized, right? d4, and then black played this move, bishop to g4. So knights before bishops, right? So this is the violation of this principle here of knights before bishops. And in this defense, in this Philidor defense here, as it's played, like knight to d7 is a move, and probably capturing here is also a move. But bishop to g4 is not to be recommended. But okay, takes, threatening mate on f7, develop, queen b3, threatening again, and knight to c3. Now, very often they ask, well, why didn't Morphy take this pawn? Right? It's a free pawn, because then this check would come and the queens would have to come off. Right? And yes, black is down a pawn, but the queens have come off, and maybe black would feel safer about this. Well, certainly Morphy didn't want the queens to come off, so that's why he didn't take it. So, knight to c3, c6. Okay, defending this. Right? Now, bishop to g5. Okay. So, here we go, right? We're going to be here. So, before we start to decide on any moves, before we decide, I'm going to play this move, or I'm going to play that move, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, we try to understand what is actually happening in a chess position, right? We want to understand the elements of a position, right? And there are, for our purposes of our discussion, I'm going to talk about three basic elements of a chess position. The first element of a chess position is what we call material, right? So material is the stuff, right? The pawns, the rooks, the knights, I like to say from the pawn to the queen and everything in between, right? Everything, the 1-point pawn, the 3-point knight, the 3-point bishop, the 5-point rook, the 9-point queen, from the pawn to the queen and everything in between. That's the material. The kings are like not material because we can't trade them, right? The kings are never captured. So we're not trading kings. So we look at material. So first I have to understand, does anybody have a material advantage, right? Is there an advantage? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pawns for black. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pawns for white. Rook, rook. Right? So let's look. Right? Rook, 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 knight, knight, bishop, bishop, knight, bishop, queen, queen. So we see material is equal, right? Okay, I think I went a little haywire with these these green circles. Sorry, guys. Whoops. But you get the idea, right? Material is equal. So that means that nobody has more stuff. Material is equal. So material. Next, king safety, right? This is very important, right? The safety of the kings. So remember, I'm not even thinking about moves yet, right? It's black's turn. I'm black. I'm not even thinking about moves yet. I'm just understanding what's happening, right? And if I ask myself whose king is safer, is my king safer or is the white king safer? Right? The answer is that the white king is safer. Why? Well, neither one is castled, but white can castle at any moment. Right? White can castle king side or white can castle queen side. But because of this awkward kind of development that I have here, right? Well, my bishop is blocked by my queen. If my bishop can't move, I can't get castled, right? So it's going to take me at least 2 moves to castle king side. I mean, I suppose it'll take me 1 move, right? If I move my knight, then I'll be ready to castle queen side. It's a little dangerous because there's already a queen over here, queen, bishop, but it's possible, right? So king safety goes to white. Okay, material is equal. King safety, advantage white. Okay, we'll agree on that. And then the third category is something we call development, right? Development in chess, just a fancy chess word for bringing your pieces out, right? Getting your pieces into the game, yeah? In a way that makes sense, right? If I put this knight here on A6, we could say this knight is developed, but is it developed well? Is it developed properly? Is this really a good square for the knight, yeah? So let's talk about development. And so let's talk about development. Black has 1, 2 pieces in the game, right? And one of them is the queen. Remember, we said we don't like bringing out our queen too early. And this queen is blocking this bishop. The other one is the knight that is pinned. So black has 2 pieces in the game. All right, let's see about white. White has 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces in the game. And on top of it is ready to castle at any moment, developing another piece. Because remember we said castling is a developing move. It brings the rook into the game. So white is ahead in development. Okay. So if white has advantage in 2 out of 3 areas, king safety and development, right? I have to watch like what I'm doing, right? I can't just attack white. Right? I'm in no position to attack white. I am behind. My pieces are undeveloped. My king is stuck in the center. I cannot attack white. I mean, it's kind of hard. I'm trying, in a position like this, you would try to suggest moves for black, right? And we see that, like, I want to get this bishop into the game somehow, right? So how can I do that? Well, I want to play maybe a move like g6 with the idea of playing bishop g7 and then getting my king out of here as quickly as possible. Right? This is a kind of idea that suggests itself, right? So g6 followed by bishop g7 and castling, right? Getting out of this kind of pickle that I have found myself in, right? But instead, black doesn't do that. Black doesn't try to evacuate the king from the center, develop his bishop, get his king to safety. Instead, black decides, I'm going to attack white. Yeah. So he's behind in development. His king is stuck in the center. So he decides to attack. This is all wrong, right? This is a complete misreading of the position, right? An absolute misreading of the position. But Black has no right to attack White, right? He can't just attack because he feels like it, right? He's worse. His position is inferior. Almost never will you be able to attack from an inferior position. I mean, maybe you can do it, like sometimes we can do it in grappling and in judo and BJJ. Yeah, we're slightly, maybe we can get away with that there. Maybe if we bait them into it, right? But in chess, from an inferior position, if you try to attack, it's almost never going to work against anybody who has like a kind of idea of what they're doing. And certainly here, this is a very provocative move, this move B5. And indeed, if we remember, Morphy was provoked, and he sacrifices his knight for 2 pawns, right? Remember we said if we can sacrifice a bishop or a knight for 2 pawns and the attack on the king or an attack, it's a good investment, right? Please don't think that I'm telling you to sacrifice your knight or bishop for 2 pawns and that everything is hunky-dory. No. The key element is the attack, right? Because all you've done is invest a pawn, right? And for a pawn investment to attack the king I'll take that any day of the week, right? And so, I mean, the rest we know. Right now, it's too late. Right now, it's over. Right, and this is the game that made Morphy a legend. Right, and we see. Right, so Black's lack of understanding about what was happening here. What is happening? Well, what's happening is that my king is stuck in the center and I'm behind development. I need to activate this bishop. I need to play g6. I need to play bishop g7, and I need to castle. Then I can think about moves like b5. But I can't, being behind in development with my king stuck in the center, play these kinds of provocative moves like b5 because your opponent will be provoked. And indeed, Morphy was provoked. And we certainly didn't, I don't think Black liked the outcome here, right? But this isn't too hard to see with a little bit of experience when people just completely misunderstand the position and they do things that they have no business doing and they are punished for it. So remember, guys, when we're trying to figure out, like, what should I do? Should I attack? Should I defend? Can I attack here? Well, we ask ourselves the 3 elements, right? The 3 basic elements: material, king safety, and development. If I'm behind in king safety and development, attacking is probably not a good idea. I can attack if I'm down material, a pawn, or even a rook, or even a queen. I can still attack, right? But if my king is stuck in the center and I'm behind in development, usually attacking is not a good idea. What we should do is try to get our pieces developed and get our king to safety. And this is a model game. Like I said, so many of these themes run across all games, run across a game of chess, that it's almost never just one thing. And certainly, and this game, Morphy versus the Duke from Paris, is a game that is very rich and very instructive. And you would do yourself, you would do well to learn this game. It's a short game. It's like 17 moves. To learn this game. And, you can access it online. You can print out the game and just sit down and study over this game, because it has so many elements. You study it from the white side, you study it from the black side. So here we saw what not to do. Sometimes knowing what not to do is just as important as knowing what you should do, right? But in some positions, you have to know, like, I can't do this, right? I may want to do this, but I can't do it because A, B, and C. If your king is stuck in the center and you're behind in development, you have no business attacking. If you do, you'll wish you hadn't. All right, guys? So, thanks a lot. I hope you learned something. I hope this was helpful. See you in the next lesson. Hey, guys, welcome back. So, we're continuing our lesson on a method for thinking in chess. Right? So often it happens that my students or some of my friends, and they're playing, and they develop their pieces, they bring their pieces into the game. Yes, knights towards the center, pawns in the center, etc., and now what, right? And now what? And they wander, like they're wandering through the forest, meandering, and just aimlessly moving their pieces about. Okay, So, all right. So let's continue with our method for thinking in chess, right? We talked about three elements, the three basic elements that we were looking at, right? Material, king safety, and development, right? These three things. So there are other things that we need to look at, right? So if we take a look at this position that we have in front of us, again, this is played by our hero, Paul Morphy. It was played in Paris versus Monsieur Chamoulier. And Morphy is white. And so let's take a look at this position. So if we do the material count, we'll see, right? Pawns, right? Very quickly. So this is the thing. We need to learn how to do this. It will become much easier for you. Just at a glance, the more you do it, the easier it'll become. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 pawns versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 pawns. I always start with the pawns just because they're the most numerous and that's the easiest. Okay, next. Queens. Queen, queen. Check. Next. Rook, 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 rook. Okay. Whoops. Sorry, that was supposed to be red. Check, check. Okay. Next. Bishop, bishop. Check. Oh, sorry, this is supposed to be red. Green, knight, knight, check. Bishop, bishop, check. Knight, knight, check. So the pieces are equal. Pawns are equal, pieces are equal. So there's no material advantage to be had. So material is balanced. So we don't have any advantage there. Next. What did we say? King safety. Okay, what is the state of the kings? All right. We could say, whoops, this guy's supposed to be red. We could say that white's king is safer. We could say that black's king is safer. We could say that it's equally safe, right? Neither king is exposed. No pawns have moved in front of either castled position. Both players, both white and black, have their knights on f3 and f6, the defending very well, right? So king safety situation is also balanced. What to do? Okay, so what did we say? We said material, king safety, and now development, right? So here's where we start to look at, because there's development and then there's development, right? You can be developed well or you can be developed poorly. And if we compare the pieces, we will see that black is still not developed his rook, whereas white has brought his rooks towards the center, and white has achieved a full state of development, right? So slight advantage in development to white. Was this enough to be decisive? No. All right. Okay, so we've done that. Okay, notice we have not thought about any moves. I haven't entertained any moves. My opponent hasn't even made a move yet, right? So now my opponent moves, and he played a6. Okay, so black played a6 here. Okay, so having done all this reconnaissance that we just did about the elements of chess, material advantage, king safety, development, we see that the position is fairly balanced, slightly favoring white because white has managed to bring his rooks towards the center, but this is not decisive yet, you know? And black just played a6. So now this is going to save you much suffering and headache and pain if you remember this checklist. And if you remember this kind of way of thinking, right? If you keep this in your head, my opponent has just made a move. What are the threats? Notice I said threats, not just threat, because you may see one threat and miss another one, right? What are the threats? So what are threats in chess? Threats in chess are checks. Does my opponent have a check? And this includes checkmate. Checkmate is a check. It's the final check, right? So am I about to be checkmated? Is my opponent about to checkmate me? What are the checks that they can play? 2, captures. Are there any captures that they can make? Am I about to lose a piece? Are one of my pieces undefended and hanging? Are they about to take it? So checks, captures, and then finally what we say, threats to capture. Can they attack me in a way where maybe two pieces are attacked simultaneously, a fork, a pin? Can they engage? Can they drive one of my pieces to the edge of the board and trap it there? Right. So checks, captures, threats to capture. I'll say it again: checks, captures, threats to capture. Again, I have not considered any moves. My opponent just played a6. I am not even looking at any moves for myself. I am looking at this position, and I ask, and we ask ourselves, does my opponent have any threats? Checks. Does black have any checks? No, black has no checks. Does black have any captures? No, black has no captures that I can, nope, no captures. Can black make any threats to capture? Well, they can advance a pawn here, right? They can play a move like, this move, d4, right? But it's our move now, right? Please notice that if they had played a move like d4, right? This is a threat to capture, right? This is what we mean by threats to capture. So they played a6. So they have no threats. There are no threats. Now I do the reconnaissance. Now it's my turn to start looking to make threats, right? Threats are the lifeblood of chess, right? Threats drive chess. Without threats, there is no chess, right? Like chess without threats is like music without sound, right? We are always looking to make threats. And eventually we make so many threats that our opponent can't answer them, right? And that's when the whole thing collapses. That's when their whole position collapses. So are there any checks that white can play? Yes, there are. Bishop takes h7. This is a check. So how does black answer this check? Well, let's say knight takes h7. Bishop takes. Knight takes, and what have we achieved with these checks? Well, looks like we've lost a piece, right? So this check is no good. Okay, we're not going to do that. Right? Remember, I said we look for the checks. It doesn't mean we play them. Like we may find 5 different checks, and none of them are any good, right? So this is the only check that we have, right? Bishop takes h7. All right. How about a capture? Well, yes, we do have a capture. We do have a capture. We could take this knight on f6. And then when black recaptures, we have to ask ourselves, have I improved the position of this bishop? Like, is this bishop better on f6 than it was on e7? Right. And I think you'll see, right, if we take a look, I mean, the position of the bishop has been improved. This bishop now is on a longer diagonal. It's in front of the king. So we're not going to do this. So this is not a capture that I would consider. It's really the only one that makes any kind of sense. I I have other captures we could take here, but I mean this is just losing material, right? So I don't want to do this, right? So I really don't have any captures. So I don't have any checks. I don't have any captures. Threats to capture. I suppose I could move my knight into the center somehow. I don't know what I'm accomplishing with this exactly. Right? After he takes, I take with the rook. Like if I played my knight here. Sorry, let's get rid of these arrows. You'll have to forgive me, guys. Sometimes I go absolutely bonkers with these arrows in the paint. So I don't have any checks. I don't have any captures. I can't really make any threats to capture, right? So part of being getting better at chess is knowing what to do when there's something to do, right? When there's something to capture, when there's something to take, when there's a checkmate to give, you see it and you know what to do, right? So knowing what to do when there's something to do. But now we have to know what to do when it appears that there's nothing to do, right? It's white's move. White can't just say pass. White has to make a move, and you have to come up with a plan. Right? So on what side of the board do we wish to play? There are three choices. Right? We can try to play on the queen side, we could try to play in the center, or we can try to play on the king side against the black king. Now, white's pieces are giving us a little bit of a hint of which way we should go. In particular, this bishop. Like, white already has his pieces. As a matter of fact, we looked at this check, right? And this check could become meaningful. White already has White already has pieces looking to come over to that side of the board, right? So white's best chance is to play on the king side. And so he finds, Morphy played this move, so we find this move. And it makes sense, right? The idea is queen f4. So this is a very strong move. This is a very good idea. It's logical. It conforms with the needs of the position. Allow me, if I may, to demonstrate, like in a perfect world, what the idea is here. Okay, let's say black continues in just kind of like routine development, right? Developing this rook, because we've been taught to put our rooks on half open or open files. Okay, now this queen comes to h4. This is where she's headed. Okay, let's say, for the sake, like this piece comes under attack. Now, here it comes, right? This is the plan, right? Capturing this knight, it takes. Remember, we said this square h7, this check, right? So this is kind of like the plan, right? This is what white wants to do, right? And if black cooperates, this is what white will do, right? But unfortunately, the player of the black pieces has a say in how this goes, right? So queen f4 is a good move because it brings the queen over to the king side and prepares an attack on the king. And black responded with knight h5, right? Attacking the queen. Now, this is a poor response because it actually sends the queen over to where she wants to go, right? And so, I mean, it's my opponent's move, right? So I ask myself the same questions again, right? Checks, captures, threats to capture. Well, here's a threat to capture that I hope, we can see, yeah? So queen h5, and now we can start to see how he's aiming at h7. Right? Checks, captures, threats to capture. So the knight is hanging, right? And please note, if black retreats this knight, right? We saw what happened, right? I mean, he loses a piece. He can't even recapture, because if he recaptures, it gets mated, right? So this knight is kind of out on a limb here, and g6 is the move that was played. Now, g4, attacking. Knight goes back. There is no checkmate now because of this move, g6. Right? So this bishop, the diagonal of this bishop has been blunted. Yeah? So there's no more checkmate here. Checks, captures, threats to capture. So again, we ask ourselves, checks, captures, threats to capture. I mean, would capturing here help white? Is this a move white wants to make? I mean, is this bishop better here than it was before? Yeah, it sure is. Because now the bishop can run to the king's defense. Yeah? So this is not a trade you want to make. Right? So he just defends this pawn, h3, and waits for black's move. Rook c8, a3. So what's the idea of a3? Like we've gone through all this, and now all of a sudden a3. Well, what he doesn't want is for a knight to come here and to attack his bishop. So checks, captures, threats to capture. Right? Remember, we were talking about exchanging pieces. White realizes that this bishop is important, or at least he thinks that it's important. So he doesn't want to have it exchanged for a knight. So he plays a3 to keep this knight out. Rook e8. Knight e2. Hello. What's the idea of knight e2? Well, if you've been listening, you've heard me say it on numerous occasions, and this is why we love studying Paul Morphy. Morphy understood the concept of the activation of inactive force, right? This knight on c3 is not contributing to the attack. And believe it or not, even though it may look very ominous here, like white can't really break through yet, right? Black is somewhat passive, but if you try to push your luck here, if you try to get too pushy, you'll end up regretting it, right? But no, we bring over this knight, right? This knight is on e2. This knight is headed either to f4 or to, whoops, got carried away with that arrow, or to g3 or something like this, right? So this knight is coming over. Please note that we went through the whole checks, captures, threats to capture, right? And we determined that the capture that we could make here that seemed to make any sense was no good. Because if I decided, remember we said that if I decided to make this capture, I'm helping black. I don't want to make captures that help my opponent, right? So I'm not looking to help my opponent, right? Rook e8, knight e2, bringing the knight over to the king side. h5. Well, I believe we spoke about this. We saw this in a game previously, right? Moving pawns in front of your castle king when you're being attacked. Now, you might say, but Chris, white has done the same thing, right? Yes, but white is not being attacked, right? White is not under attack. It is black that is being attacked. Now the attack, actually this move h5, I kind of call this like self-attack. Like you're opening up lines against yourself, right? Knight f4, knight to h7. Okay, and here a little bit of combination. Not as important for our for the purpose of our discussion, but what is important is understanding checks, captures, threats to capture, right? Are there any checks that white can play? No. Captures, well, yes, there is. And this is a very important capture, right? This is a very important trade. Why? This one, knight e6. Sorry, let me get over here. Knight to e6. Because this knight is very important. It's holding together this, like this pawn, which holds this pawn, which holds this pawn. Right? This is a key defender of the pawn chain. Knight e6 takes, rook takes. And we see what's happened to the pawns in front of black's king. Okay, and here it looks as if, black is actually winning a piece. Because 1, 2, 3 attackers versus 1 and 2 defenders, right? So it looks, for all intents and purposes, as if white has just lost a piece. Checks, captures, threats to capture. Checks, captures, threats to capture. Does white have a check? Well, he does. Rook g6. Check. Attacking the king, attacking the bishop. So the piece is not actually lost. This is what we call a sham sacrifice. It's not a real sacrifice. But anyway, let the fireworks continue. Right? King moves, and he doesn't take the bishop. Instead, he attacks the knight. But please notice what has happened to the pawn cover, right? If we were to go back and do our original analysis of, let's say, we talk about development and king safety, right? Because material, if we do the material count, we'll see, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. 6, yes? But what about your king? What about the state of your king? So whose king do you prefer? I think by now you guys know which king you would prefer. Queen takes h5. Rook c7. We'll take that, thank you. Rook e to e7, protecting himself. Checks, captures, threats to capture. Do we have a check? We do have a check. King to e8, and now the final check. Rook to g8. right? And black resigned here, right? Because, well, position is lost, right? I mean, if he tries to block this check, then, check and takes, it's just all the pieces are dropping, right? So for our purposes, we can see that, I mean, how did this start? How did we get here? Well, we started in the position where A6 had just been played. Whoops, again, guys, forgive me. I really do go crazy with these arrows, right? I don't mean to confuse you with that. So he had just played A6, and now, like, we did checks, captures, threats to capture, and we determined that there are no checks that make any sense. The only capture we have actually helps black, doesn't hurt him. So now we have to find a plan. Where to put our pieces that make sense. Do we play on the queen side? Do we play in the center? Or do we play on the king side? And we determined that because of the disposition of our pieces, especially these bishops, right, and this knight over here and the queen, that, and the queen, that we should play on the king side. And again, nothing violent. Like, there's no violence here. Like, this isn't some kind of, dramatic move, right? It's just a move, queen f4. But the response, the response that it provokes is rather dramatic, right? Knight h5, and now this move g6. And now all of a sudden we start to see the construction around the king get a little bit weakened. And then, right, he starts getting driven back. And again, not exchanging, right? Not exchanging and helping our opponent. Not doing that, right? Instead, making a prophylactic move. We call this prophylaxis, right? We want to keep this knight out of b4 because we want to keep our bishop. And rerouting this knight. I didn't know, like, what to do. Checks, captures, threats to capture. Didn't have any checks, captures, or threats to capture. So I improve my knight. By the way, knights are usually the main pieces in need of improvement, and they are also the easiest pieces to improve. Just a little side tidbit there for you, right? And now this move h5, which just completely destroys. Black destroys his own pawn cover, right? Boom, boom. We see this sham sacrifice. Checks, captures, threats to capture. Checks, captures, threats to capture. I'm going to keep saying it. Checks, captures, threats to capture. And finally, after this check, this was the last check. You can see for yourself if you go through and you look at this position that black is lost. So remember, guys, after we've done our initial reconnaissance and we've determined what is the state of material, what is the state of the kings, what is the state of the development, and we've determined who has an advantage, if anybody, right? Remember, trying to attack somebody when you're in an inferior position is almost always a recipe for defeat. And then we try to come up with a plan. In this position, we saw queen f4, quiet move, nothing violent, nothing destructive, just a quiet move, bringing it in with the plan of attacking on h7. And this didn't come to fruition, but black was very cooperative with pawn moves in front of the king and things like this. So remember, guys, checks, captures, threats to capture. Keep that in your head. You have to ask yourself that question after every move that your opponent makes, because every move your opponent makes changes the position somewhat. It's like a Rubik's Cube that fights back, So you have to always be asking yourself, checks, captures, threats to capture. And I guarantee you, if you do this, you will win more games. You will win games that you should win. You might win games that you shouldn't win. And you won't lose games that you should win, right? That meaning that you just missed a check and they just came and blasted you from a winning position. All right, guys? Okay, guys, welcome back. So here we're continuing with our method for thinking in chess, and we spoke about the elements of chess and how to look at them and analyze them and try to determine who has an advantage, if anybody, right? Material, king safety, and development, right? And then once we determine that, that those elements are in order, or that we have an advantage, or that we're slightly better, we start looking for moves, right? Checks, captures, threats to capture, right? Checks, captures, threats to capture. Okay. So now we're going to take a look at this position, and in this position, black. Well, first of all, if we look, right, we should notice right away that white has an overwhelming material advantage, right? Overwhelming material advantage. If we compare the pieces, queen, queen, bishop, knight, rook, let's say this rook, right? That leaves white with an extra bishop and rook. Yeah. So this has gone very wrong for black. But as we said before, chess is a fight, and especially in rapid games with quick time limits, 5 minutes blitz or 15-minute rapid, that clock is ticking and that clock is going down, and so people don't resign as like even in completely lost positions. They either want to clock job you, they want to play you out on the clock, or hoping that in time pressure and it does happen that in time pressure you mess up, you get mated, or you return the material. You'd be surprised, and I'm sure some of it's happened to you, right? Because you're here, right? You're playing, and so I take it, you're either playing rapid or you're playing, maybe you are playing classical time controls, 40 moves in 2 hours and sudden death in 1, and you're spending 6 hours sitting over the chessboard. I don't know, but my bet would be that you're probably playing some rapid chess, as are many of my friends. So let us take a look here. So we understand we have an overwhelming material advantage, which means that if the trend maintains, if I just maintain the trend as it is, black is doomed. Right? Because black just doesn't have the material to fight back, right? So in this position, our friend, who shall remain nameless, right? So it's black's move, right? So black played this move h6. So in this position, our friend decided, he followed our opening principle of what do we do when we're ahead in material? What do we do? We exchange pieces, right? So which pieces can he exchange? Well, one idea, like we would like to exchange queens, right? So this is a move, right? Queen d2, offering to exchange queens, and he kind of has to. He doesn't have to take it, but if he doesn't, then he's going to lose this bishop. So this would be a kind of forced, right? And I actually like this better than what he played, but what he played is also good. He played rook e8, right? Forcing, like this rook is pinned, right? So this trade is going to happen one way or the other. Yeah? And we're getting the dangerous pieces off the board, right? I would have preferred trading the queens, but he's trading the rooks. Okay. We get those heavy, dangerous pieces off the board. Those are the pieces that are going to checkmate us, that can checkmate us, queens and rooks, right? So let's get rid of them. So takes, check, king h7. And remember, we ask ourselves, right? What did my opponent's last move do? Are there any threats? Checks, captures, threats to capture. Does black have any checks, captures, threats to capture? Yes, black does have some checks, but none of them are like within the realms of sanity. Yeah. So let's see what happened in this game. So the player with the white pieces decided to go after this queen, right? He started chasing this queen. And checks, captures, threats to capture. Yes. Black captured a pawn, attacking the rook. The rook came to d1. Now this move, queen b5. Queen b5, and white decided, well, okay, so let me win some more material, because if we notice, this pawn is pinned, right? So I'm just going to win another pawn, right? And then black played checks, captures, threats to capture, checkmate. Yeah. Game over. Game over. Yeah. So, I give to black's credit, I suppose, like this move, queen b5, you're toast as black, right? You're already toasted, but you're not resigning, right? You're not giving up because it's a quick time control and chess is a fight. And if you want to win the game, then you're going to have to checkmate me. And I'm not just going to give up. So I'm going to play this move, Queen B5, this kind of creeping move that seems to just, kind of resign myself to being destroyed slowly and hope you make a mistake. And sure enough, there was a mistake and checkmate. So how does this serve our purposes? Like what can we learn from this game, right? What can we learn from this game? Well, checks captures threats to capture, right? And first understand that black has no threats. Black has no threats. So that means that as the white player here, I have like a free move, right? I can do not whatever I want, but I'm not under any attack, right? And here's the thing: in positions like this, and in being up material, and a big part of winning is not losing at times, right? So the one thing I don't want to happen, like, what is the source of my safety here? Well, the source of my safety is that I'm protected along the back rank by this rook. So I do not want to interfere with the activity of this rook, right? Because that is what is keeping my king safe. Because actually, the king is slightly claustrophobic because this bishop is covering, right? The only square where he can go. Actually, the white king can't go anywhere, right? He's stuck back there. But that does not mean that he's not safe. Like, black's king is in much worse condition. And this is a little bit more nuanced, but checks captures threats to capture. So I look for the checks. So in my mind, I see, hello, here's a check. Bishop F5, right? This is a nasty check, right? Actually, this is a fork. It's a nasty check. Well, there's a problem. I mean, just take it, right? It's unprotected, yeah? So we can't play this check. But this bit of reconnaissance, this bit of checks, captures, threats to capture has not been wasted, right? Okay, so I don't have any checks that make any sense. Obviously, any queen checks that I play, right, or any knight check that I go and do is not going to be useful because all those squares are covered. So checks, captures. I do have a capture. Yeah, I do have a capture. Queen F7. And now notice how the magic square for my bishop is covered, right? And after Queen F7, black is finished, right? Black is lost. Because there is no way to stop Bishop F5. You can't stop it. My queen now covers it, right? So chasing after the queen with a move like knight E1, yeah, just doesn't, I actually want the queen where she is. I want the queen on C2 on the same diagonal as the king, right? From C2 to H7, right? I want him on that. I want her on that diagonal. I don't want to chase her with my knight. And on top of it, remember we said, big part of winning is not losing. Now I've interfered with the action of my rook on the back rank. So this knight E1 is an error, right? So Queen F7 and the game's just won, yeah? The game is just over because there's no way. I mean, if he tries to protect this way, then this move, Bishop F5 anyway, pins the queen to the king. So after Queen F7, black is done, right? Black is finished. But even here, okay, let's say even here, after this move, this, and even here, if I stopped and I did, what are my opponent's threats? Checks, captures, threats to capture. I would see, I guess it's a little weird, but I hope you would see this check, right? Checks, captures, threats to capture. What are the threats? What did my opponent's move threaten? What are the threats? And so we see that, well, Queen F1, that's checkmate. So then I can even correct my error and just go back to where I came. Go back to where I came from. I'm still winning, right? I'm still winning, and I'm still going to probably capture on F2. or like play my bishop to f5 at some point, or check with my queen here, and then bring my rook down here. Like I'm mating, yeah? So a big part of winning is not losing, yeah? In a winning position, we want to make sure that we hold everything nice and tight. We don't want to engage in, like we say, if you pass the guard and you got him inside control, would you rather hold him there, like pressing him into the mat with like your forehead, your shoulder in his face, or do you want to pass the guard and then go into a mad scramble, right? And who knows what's going to happen there, yeah? Who knows what's going to happen when we're scrambling? I don't want to scramble. I like nice, boring crushes. I like to win in as boring fashion as possible. I don't want any drama, right? And these checks, captures, and threats to capture are ways to avoid the drama, but we must be consistent. We must do them after every move, and then it'll become automatic for you, right? It'll become much easier for you to always ask this question: what are the threats? Checks, captures, threats to capture. Confession. Do I always manage to employ this whole reconnaissance system of material advantage, king safety, development, checks, captures, threats to capture? Sadly, no, none of us are perfect. So we all make our mistakes, but I use it as often as I can, as often as I remember to use it. And sometimes during a game, you just get careless or you forget. So mistakes happen. But guys, your results will improve greatly if you stop and try to understand what's going on in the position. So if you understand that you are inferior, that you are worse, that you are behind in development, and your king is in the center of the board, you will not go on these half-cocked attacks and just lash out, right? Because that's exactly what the superior side wants. I want you to lash out at me because you're in no position to do that. And then you will just, you will suffer. Right? Or likewise, if you have a superior position and you understand the nature of your superiority and you want to bring your pieces and you can attack the king, you'll do that. But you understand why you're doing it. And does your attack have a chance of success based on the needs of the position and your understanding of the position? And then finally, checks, captures, and threats to capture. For both sides, I always start with my opponent first. I look to see what they want. What can they do? What are they about to do? And if there are no threats or no threats that I have to deal with, then I go about my business of trying to find checks, captures, threats to capture, find a plan, improve my pieces, etc., etc. But everything with a method so that I'm not jumping from one side of the board to the other side of the board. Oh, let me move this piece. Oh, no, maybe I'll move that piece. Oh, let me try this. Let me try that. No, right? The only time that is even remotely acceptable is when you're in a totally lost position and everything is collapsing anyway. But even here we see, right, that the black player, played this move, Queen B5, right, and in the hopes of swindling a win here, and it worked, right? So even here, in a completely, totally, absolutely lost position, black found a move that gave him some chances, right? And we see that this did not have to happen. If we looked at checks, captures, threats to capture, we would see that even here, we can just play knight f3 and everything is finished and there are no threats and black is getting checkmated. All right, guys, I hope that was helpful. I hope that you gained something from this, and if you have, then I am very happy, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Take care. Welcome back. So let's continue with talking about a method for thinking in chess. What is it that we're looking for? So we're going to talk about attacking, right? We're going to talk about the king side attack here. So our opponent will often give us signals. They will make moves or do things that indicate that we should start to attack them, right? That we can attack them, because I can't just attack because I feel like it. This is a recipe for disaster. But there are certain things our opponents do that will signal that we are under obligation to attack them. If we don't attack them, then those moves or those weak moves or those dubious moves that they play will then come back to haunt us. So it's not just that I should attack. It's that I must attack, because if I don't, I'm going to be on the shoe is going to be on the other foot very quickly. All right, enough talk. Let's take a look at this game between von Scheve and Richard Teichmann in 1907. Two German masters. Teichmann, probably the more accomplished of the two. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, the Italian game. And this move, c3, with the idea of reinforcing this move, d4, right? That's the idea. We want to put 2 pawns in the center. We want to play to control the center. So that's what white is doing with that. Queen e7. Right? We don't want to develop our queen too early. However, this move has a purpose, right? There's a reason behind this. And the reason is that it's directed at this pawn. If white were now to follow through with the plan of d4, well, takes, and then queen takes e4, check. This pawn is undefended. So this wins a pawn. So white is not going to do that. So instead, white castles. d6, now comes d4, bishop to b6, a4, a6, a5. Now it would seem black plays bishop a7. He doesn't actually take this, but it would seem like he could, because the rook is defending only once, right? This is one defender and 2 attackers. So, but there's a little trick here that we should be aware of. So let's say first, let's say that bishop takes. Well, then comes rook takes, right? And then if knight takes, then comes a check. And it seems like this knight can come back and block the check, but then comes this pin. Right? I mean, the knight is pinned, sorry. The knight walks into the pin, right? So the knight is pinned. And then comes this kind of pressuring of the pinned piece, right? This pawn, as I often say, that pawns are the perfect pinned piece pressurizers. So when a piece is pinned, if you can place your pawns in proximity to the pinned piece, please do. It is often has this effect, right? And if he tries to get out of it with a move like b5, then we could just take it, because here is another pin. This is also pinned. So when he takes this, we take the rook, and now this is pinned, and this is under. This is just, it's all collapsing. So this is out. Yeah. So he doesn't bite. Yeah. The fish does not put the hook in its own mouth. All right. So bishop to a7, h3. Haha. So h3. So why this move h3? Well, it is designed, I would think, right, is designed to prevent this pin, right? So this is a defensive move, and it is played sometimes, and sometimes it's good to play. You will see strong players make this move h3, but in this position, this is like there's no need for this, right? Better to develop your pieces, right? Let's say you develop your bishop, and if he comes and pins this, then I mean you can always bring the other knight to defend it, right? So there's no need. This is a defensive. Sorry, this is a defensive move, right? This move h3 is a defensive move, and it's moving pawns in front of your castled king. So this is, remember, we talked about castling, and when it's good, when we should castle. White has castled, so that's good. But now white is pushing pawns in front of his castled king. This alone by itself might not be enough, right? But this is something that black has taken note of. Okay. All right. Black develops, knight f6. And now this capture, right? So white decides to capture on e5. This is what we call releasing the tension, right? There's tension in the center. These pawns are in contact with each other. And so white releases the tension in the center, you know? And normally, I myself, and we're taught, you know, we want to keep pawns in the center, maintain control of the center. And normally I would like to maybe keep control of the center with a pawn. But here actually our hero, Mr. Teichmann, takes back with the knight e5, right? Bringing a knight into the center. and also attacking the best defender of the castled position. Now, let's go back. I want to talk about this move, d takes e5, about releasing the tension in the center. Because in addition, it's not just a capture, right? It's not just capturing. Because look what this exchange does for the dark squared bishop. Right? This dark squared bishop now is awake. Right? He's been brought to life. Whereas before, with this pawn on d4, he was limited. Right? So this exchange is not just, I'm trading pawns, la da da. Yeah? No. There's more to it than that. Right? So now we have some elements that are starting to accumulate. Yeah? We have this pawn on h3 that has kind of like stepped out of line. We have an open diagonal, right? And this is why Teichmann black plays with the knight instead, right? Because now he has two things going. Like these bishops are now like alive, yeah, aiming at the king side, and the only defender of that king side is this knight. So that's why this knight captures, yeah? Okay. And he takes it, right? I mean, I don't know how much choice he had in the matter. Maybe it would be better to, yeah, I don't know. I think this is a big mistake. Like, no, like I'm not, like I'm going to let you take. I'll recapture with my queen, yeah? Right? Better let him take and capture with the queen, in my opinion. But he takes, and now the queen comes into the game. And he's trying to, and on top of it, he's undeveloped, right? Nope, nope, nope. Yeah? Now he tries to develop it. Now it's too late. Boom. Bishop takes h3, right? G takes h3. And now the consequences of exchanging pawns in the center, of releasing the tension, are felt. Check. Right? The queen cannot be captured because the pawn is pinned. Right? Check. Now the knight comes in. Well, we talked about the queen and the knight, right? This is checkmate. So he thinks he's just in time to bring up that defender, right? Because this knight now defends against this checkmate, yeah? 1-2 versus 1-2, so it's even, so the knight defends. One more check. Thank you, sir. Again, Mr. Bishop, thank you for exchanging pawns in the center and opening my diagonal for me. Thank you very much. King goes to h1, and now bishop takes f2. And here white resigns. Right? And the question is why? Well, if he takes it, if he takes this bishop, then comes knight takes f2. That's checkmate. And it's a good thing, too, because you're about to lose your queen. So. And then, if not that, I mean, if something else, let's just play. I don't know. It's hard to make suggestions here. Bishop d2, then comes check. Yeah, and there's only one way out, and then it's checkmate. So checkmate is unavoidable, in other words, right? So, like, what are the signals here? Like, black, and the thing is that, and this is often the case, weaker players versus stronger players. Like, black didn't really do anything special. Black didn't do anything. I remember talking to a friend of mine, Grandmaster, and he's like, when I'm playing weaker players, I really don't do anything. I wait for them to come up with a plan, and then I just punish them. And so, like this, like black didn't make him do this. He didn't have to do this. I mean, black didn't make him exchange pawns in the center like this. Yeah, he did it to himself. And all black did was just read those signals, read those signs, behind in development, no defenders around the king. These bishops, right, are wide open, right? These wide open bishops. And that's it. And tally ho. And that's what happened, right? So remember, guys, look for the signals to attack. Try to read them. Weaknesses in front of the king, open diagonals, open files, pieces not around our opponent's king. if we can bring in, and we've talked about this before, the magic number is 3. If we can bring in 3 pieces against our opponent's king, we should be able to checkmate them. And so it was here, right? Because we saw 1, 2, 3. Right? So 3 pieces is the magic number. Sometimes you can do it with 1, sometimes with 2, but 3 pieces is usually enough. All right, guys? So this is kingside attack, right? Don't move the pawns in front of your castled king unless you have to, and when your opponent does, these can become objects of attack. Don't release the tension in the center too early or for no reason or just because you can't think of something else, because this opens up your opponent's pieces. All right, guys? All right, till next time. See you soon. Hey guys, welcome back. So let us continue on our merry journey of the kingside attack. Okay, so again, here we have another game between, classical game between a fellow by the name of Lubarski and Soultambeieff. This was played in Belgium, in Liège, in 1928. So we have before us another double king pawn opening, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, the Italian game, or the gioco piano, very popular back then, and it still is today. c3, we know the idea behind this move, c3, hopefully, from our last game, is to play d4. And here, our black plays a little bit differently. He just backs out, plays bishop b6, so he doesn't get hit by d4, and then have to move. So this is like a prophylactic move, right? It allows him to have an extra move in hand, right? By spending a move here, he'll use it for something productive later. d4 and queen e7. And again, the idea of this move, queen e7, is to target this pawn. So if for some reason this pawn should disappear, he's targeting this pawn on e4. Yeah? Castles, knight f6, and now comes a move, right? A pawn move, right? It's just a move. Right? What harm could it do? This move, d5, yeah, hitting this knight, yeah. And so now this knight is somewhat embarrassed, as we like to say, right? Or so it would appear. He chose to go back to b8, like back to where he came from. Go back to where you came from, young man, right? I mean, what are his choices? I guess he could go to the edge of the board and then attack this bishop. Sorry, but if this bishop backs out, this knight can get trapped, possibly. So we don't like to put our knights on the edge of the board. He could go to d8 or he could go to b8. He decides to go to b8, go back home, right? But here's the deal. This move d5, this is a bad move. Yeah, you made the knight go away. You made the knight go back home to b8. Good for you. Bravo, right? But the consequences of this move, of this pawn move, are far more serious than for white than they are for black. Black loses a move. Yes, yeah, I got to go back to b8. But what it does is it opens the diagonal for this dark squared bishop. In this position, this bishop was blocked, and this bishop was open. By playing d5, this kind of, I'm going to attack the knight and make it run away. There's kind of like one move threat. This is a one move threat. Yes, it is inconvenient to have to run away with my knight. But what is far more inconvenient is what you've done to your position by playing this move d5. Pawns don't go backwards, right? And now my bishop is open, your bishop is entombed behind his own pawns. So, and then on top of it, he plays bishop d3, right? Just a wasted move, right? So, d6, h3. Moving a pawn in front of the castled king. We saw this in a previous game, right? So now the kind of storm clouds are gathering, right? We're starting to see signs that our opponent is kind of almost inviting us to attack him, right? Because this move, h3, moving this h3 pawn in front of the castle king, this is designed to prevent, like, this bishop g4, right? And this is a case where we say, like, the cure is worse than the disease, yeah? Because if you're worried about this pin, I mean, you could just, again, you could challenge, you could play this move to try and kind of challenge this bishop. And then at some point bring your knight to support the other knight, yeah? And develop in this fashion to try and like remedy or put a band-aid on this d5 move that you've made. But instead, you played this move, h3. Well, and this is not a good move. How black responds, though, is a good move. h6. So black plays the same exact move that white played. White played h3, bad. White plays h6, good. Why is that? Well, we spoke, I mean, I'm going to go back a little bit when we talked about castling and how it's important to castle, and it is, right? Castling is important. Castle when you should castle. I mean, castle when you must castle. Castle when it's good to castle. Don't just castle because you can castle. Because if you look here, you will see white has castled and black has not castled. But it's going to be black who is going to attack white, right? And even though we said, like, you know, attacking with your king in the center can be dangerous, and it can, but in this position, everything is closed. There are no open files. There are no open diagonals. All the files, all the diagonals, right, are closed. But this move is going to allow black to open files and diagonals against white. And this move h6 is the, like, whoops, didn't want to do that. Sorry. No. So this move h6 is kind of like the precursor to a pawn storm on black's Oh my goodness, what have I done with all these arrows? Sorry, guys. Got carried away. Sometimes, you know, I lose control of these arrows, and I just start going off. Okay, so h6 is a precursor to a pawn storm against the castled king. All right. Next, queen e2, and here it comes, g5, right? So please notice, like, white castled like we're supposed to. Black did not castle, but it is white who is coming under attack. And it is because of moves like h3, d5, right? Releasing the tension in the center. I mean, again, all the signals are there. All the signals are there, right? And now this move, g5, looking to play g4, looking to make contact with the enemy forces. So this is the danger of a move like h3 sometimes, that you create a hook. We call it a hook. So this is a hook where our forces can come into contact, right? And pawns are very useful for opening files and diagonals, which we must have in order to attack. In order to attack, I must have open files, open diagonals. Okay, enough of that. So knight h2 to try and stop g4, and he plays it anyway. Yeah, that's always annoying, right? When I play a move, I see your plan, and I play a move to stop what you want to do, and you do it anyway. Yeah, takes, and here's the idea: open file, like a semi-open file, right? But the idea is to put the rook on the file with targets, Okay, and right, bishop h6. This is kind of like, now you're asking, like, you are really asking for it. Yeah, but I guess if you're going to die, we say die on a full stomach, right? So he's going to die with a full stomach. But this is really asking. This is like, this is, what's the word I'm looking for? Highly audacious, like the audacity. How dare you? It's outrage. Next, knight takes, bishop back to e3, knight takes, king takes, check. Notice, like, the open files against the king. Notice, right? Yeah, he played this move bishop e3 to try and block this guy. A little late for that. Notice all these open diagonals and open files. All right, check. Back, queen h3. right? The pawn, she is pinned. The pawn is pinned, so we cannot take it. Here, actually, white resigned in this position, and we should, like, why? Well, I mean, he can defend. He can defend the checkmate. You play g3. Right, and this stops the checkmate. But after bringing the rook to the h file that white so generously opened up when he captured our pawn on h6, there is no way to stop checkmate on either h2 or h1. If queen f3 to stop checkmate on h1, there's checkmate on h2. So that's out. And I mean, there's this move, right, f3, which allows the queen to defend, right? But then we have, again, the problem of our hero bishop, dark square bishop, of this check. Yeah, and if he takes it, then mate. Or if he blocks, if he blocks, well, he walks into a pin, right? And then checkmate anyway, right? So we can see how in this game and the previous game, there were certain common signals that were sent to the attacking side. Yeah, the release of tension in the center, right? Opening up this diagonal, right? Releasing this tension either by capturing or by advancing, and then moving pawns in front of the castled king. This move h3, right? And black responded very well, because a stereotypical or unthinking move would be just to castle. Why? Because that's what I was taught to do, right? So I was taught to do it, so I'm going to do it. No, black says, no, not castling. Actually, I'm going to play the same move you played. Your move is bad, my move is good. Why? Because my move is the precursor to an attack and a pawn storm, and then we saw what happened, right? So remember, look out for those signals: open files, open diagonals, weaknesses in front of the castled king, advanced pawns in front of the castled king. These things become hooks, right? They become a hook for us to latch onto and I guess rip our opponent to pieces. Yes? All right. Take care, guys, and I'll see you soon. Thanks a lot. Hey guys, welcome back and to Attacking the King, Kingside Attack. And here is one of my games. This was a rapid game played on the internet, so the quality of rapid games, not always the best. A lot of kind of speculative sacrifices that, right, maybe wouldn't stand up to scrutiny. But the clock is ticking, and so that's the idea, right? You put your opponent under some pressure, and if they answer correctly and turns out you were wrong, then you're going to lose. And if they can't answer, then chances are you'll win, right? So here in this position, if we take a look and just do some quick arithmetic, we're going to see that I'm playing white. I'm the white player here. We're going to see that white is down. White is down a piece, right? There's an extra knight, right? And what do we have to show for this, right? So, I mean, if the trend were just to stay the same, and if there were nothing going on, like, white is going to lose this game because he's just down a piece. But there is something to show for it, right? And I sacrificed a bishop. Believe me, please, I did. To achieve this, we see the minuses, like white is down material, right? But what are his trumps? Well, the trumps are, if we look at king safety, which we discussed a while back as being the most important element in the game of chess, it's all about the king. We will see that black's king is all alone. As a matter of fact, all of black's pieces are away from him. Whereas white has heavy pieces in the vicinity of the king, of the enemy king. And by the way, this bishop too, right, has this long open diagonal. So these storm clouds are gathering, have gathered, yeah? And I played, so in addition to the bishop, I then sacrificed a rook. Right? And this rook must be taken. If it's not taken, then it's just straight mate. Yeah. So this makes that kind of stuff easy to calculate, right? If he doesn't take it, he's getting mated. So he has to take it, and he does. And then, as we saw our hero Morphy before us, we ask ourselves which one of our pieces isn't working, and who can come in and contribute, right? Rooks love open files. Check. And again, storm clouds are gathering, right? Check. King takes. Rook g5. King f6. And here, all right, so now I see mate, right? Now I know I'm going to checkmate my opponent, right? Because this is a well-known kind of pattern, right? And mate, right? This is the ladder. This is the ladder mate. So I was very pleased with myself. I was very pleased with myself for finding this, yeah. And then I put it in the computer, or the computer, you know, looked at it, and it was like, hey, Rook g4 is made in 2. And I'm like, my Mona Lisa was destroyed. But this is how it is, right? Like, I'm sure like a grandmaster, a master, or somebody would have spotted this move right away. Yeah, because this is made in 2. Because now the king has to go to f5, right? And then this is just checkmate. And this is kind of how, or I guess I shouldn't say that. This is how kind of I am. Like, I see the pattern, I see the mate, so I just go with that because I know it's a sure thing, right? But the more efficient, the more aesthetically pleasing, right, move here, as opposed to queen h6, is actually this move rook g4, right? It's more artistic, it's faster, it's more efficient. Can't argue with that, right? But I, being the mad hacker that I am, I just saw it and I was like, okay, you know, this is good enough. We'll just do it like this. So why do I show this to you? I show this to you not to demonstrate my brilliance, although I was, you know, I was happy, right, that that it worked, right? I think, I don't know if this was inspiration or perspiration, as they say, right? Maybe this was forced upon me to a certain extent. My position was worse, so I kind of had to do this, and I figured, but it was there, right? His king, I noticed his king is all by himself, all alone, and my pieces are in the vicinity. So let's go, right? Sacrifice the bishop, sacrifice the rook on top of it, and these things, and once you like get better at understanding some basic motifs, ideas, patterns, and positions, these things become, I don't want to say easy to calculate, although for some they are easy to calculate, but they become easier to calculate for us mere mortals, right? Because we've recognized the patterns and we've seen them before. So again, king by himself, 3 pieces is enough to do the trick. And let's see, is that true? 1, 2. Please take into account this piece as a 3rd piece, because if you tried to block, right, we can still take. So this bishop is a 3rd piece. Yeah? And then we have the same deal, right? So 3 pieces, right? If you can bring 3 pieces against the king, that's the magic number. Sometimes it'll work with 1 if they mess up. I mean, if they do something silly, you can just checkmate them on the back rank. Sometimes 2, but 3 pieces is usually like, you know, that's when the trumpets should start blaring, and you know, we give the tally ho, right? And let us attack and let it begin. All right. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you till next time. Hey guys, welcome back. So here I'd like to spend some time talking with you about maybe a kind of a more advanced concept that you're going to run into as you progress, as the strength of your opponents increases, as the caliber of your opponent increases, you're going to run into these things. They're called, I guess we call them, or they're like prepared variations. So we've been looking at the Italian game. We looked at the Petrov. We saw, we saw like the basic ideas and what each side is trying to do. As you progress and as you get stronger, you're going to find there are these prepared variations where in certain openings, like there are moves that are played, and the responses become what the grandmasters like to call very concrete. Meaning, like you have to know the move here, you have to know like the analysis, you have to know the theory, you have to know what to do. Because if you don't, you're just going to get a worse position or a lost position, right? And it happens a lot. I mean, certainly it's happened to me, and I've been on the giving end and I've been on the receiving end, and that's how it goes. So, for instance, let me just give you an example here. So, let's say you're a player with the black pieces, and your opponent plays e4, and you play e5. And your opponent plays knight f3, and you go knight c6, and bishop c4. And then, normally, the Italian game is bishop c5, which is what I often recommend for my students if they want to play double king pawn, is to play bishop c5 for reasons that I'm going to make plain to you in a second. But let's say instead, you think to yourself, bishop c5 or knight f6, who cares? And Chris Max told me to develop knights before bishops anyway, right? So I'm going to develop this knight. Now, if your opponent just castles, let's say they just castle, and then you play bishop c5, and they play knight c3, and everything goes real vanilla, then that's fine, right? Then it's no big deal. But after knight f6, your opponent can play this move, knight g5. Right, and in the English-speaking world, in England and in the United States, we call this the fried liver attack. There's some explanations. Joseph Blackburn, who was an English grandmaster back in the 19th century, early 20th century, he played this move, and supposedly he was eating a plate of fried liver at the board. So that's where it got its name. That's the mythology. But anyway, that's not so important. Fried liver attack, yeah? So you play this move, knight f6, and you're like, what's the big deal? Knight f6, bishop c5. And all of a sudden you find that you're in trouble on this square, on f7. And so here, this is a prepared variation, thank you. And the response is very concrete, right? There's only one thing to do here, and you either know it or you don't. Or I suppose you could come up with it, right? I guess, right? If you don't panic, right? And that move is d5, right? So this is a move you have to play. You have to know this, and the play becomes very concrete, yeah, for both sides, as a matter of fact. So not just for black, but for white as well, right? And after it takes, like the move that is recommended, the best move to play is knight a5, hitting this bishop. And actually the best move for white here, according to the latest theory, is this move, bishop d3. Yeah? Why? Because we want to control this square e4. Yeah? Because after this knight gets kicked out, we want to be able to go back to f3 without any hassle. But if instead of bishop d3, which is very strange, because like it blocks this center pawn. And so this seems all wrong. Concrete variation, right? So like your general guidelines and principles won't be enough here, right? You'll get into a bad position, right? So after knight a5, if you were to play this more natural move of bishop to e2, then after h6, knight f3, then comes e4, right? And this knight gets chased all over the place, yeah? And we don't want that, right? So this is an example of a concrete variation that both sides have to know what they're doing. Right, like what do white players dream of? Yeah, white players dream that black will capture this pawn, right? This is what they want, right? And this is another, like, concrete variation, although I don't know why any black player would ever want to go into this, but I've seen it happen, but admittedly at the lower levels, at like scholastic levels, because now white gets to sacrifice this knight on f7, king takes f7, queen f3 check, yeah, and this is a fork, and this knight is pinned, right? So now black has to take a walk with his king to e6. Yep. Now white just piles the pressure on. Yeah. Now white just piles this pressure on. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that black is lost. All right? Black can manage to defend here, but I mean, I know what side I would want to be on, and it's not an easy task with hanging out with your king on e6. White is going to do things like castle. Right? White is going to do things like play d4 to open these files and attack the king. This is tough, right? So, but this is what a white player loves. What a white player would really love, right, is after this check is for you to play like a natural move, or quote unquote natural, right? Like king g8, right? Hide your king. And then queen takes, check, 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 and checkmate by the bishop. Yeah? So I've seen this happen, right? I've seen this happen more than once. So this is what can happen when you are, like, when you just innocently, like a babe in the woods, walk into a prepared variation thinking everything is good, I'm going to be able to negotiate this position on my general principle knowledge. Once you start moving up the ladder and the strength of your opponent starts increasing, you're going to find that, like, that is good, because that will always guide you, right, and like achieve playable positions at a certain level. But there will come a time where you have to start understanding those concrete variations, and not just memorizing them, because that's not good enough, right? Memorizing is probably, I mean, it's good to have a memory, but if you just memorize them and your opponent deviates, now what, right? So we have to know the concrete variations, and we have to understand why these moves are played, and that takes work. And that takes time. That takes, some failure and some success, hopefully, right? So beware of the prepared variations as you move up the ladder, right? A move is not just a move, right? So this is on you, and hopefully we got a nice little look at this fried liver attack of what can go wrong, yeah? All right. Thanks a lot, guys, and see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back. So let's continue talking about prepared variations, and this time something from my own practice. So this is a game that was played on the internet, rapid game. So again, when the clock is ticking and you have very little time, prepared variations can be especially deadly, yeah, or problematic, because the side that understands why, understands the rationale behind moves, or what moves to play, or even sometimes seemingly like moves that are non-intuitive, right? But are actually correct. So let's continue. So I was playing black here. So my opponent played e4, and I played d6, d4, 2 pawns in the center, knight f6, attacking a pawn in the center. Right, developing and attacking. Knight c3, and now knight bd7. So this opening could have been a perk. It could have been a lot of things. This one they call the Hannaham or the Black Lion, and I'm partial to it. So bishop c4, and now e5. So yes, like all these moves, d6, right? This move d6, this move knight bd7 is to prepare putting a pawn in the center, right? Staking our claim. Knight f3, bishop e7. So getting ready to castle if need be. And then here it comes, right? So this move, bishop f7. Right? This is a known variation, and if you didn't know any better, it scared the bejesus out of you, because Now comes this knight, yeah? So bishop f7 check. The king is asked to come out and play. Now this knight comes here, right? And you got to be careful. Like, you could lose the game right away. So if you don't know what to do, right? So for instance, move like king e8, and then comes knight e6, trapping the queen. This is bad. Right? We don't want to do that. So if we play, like, let's say king f8, then comes knight e6 again. Fork. Yeah. I mean, a move like king g6 seems suicidal to me, although I have seen, like in a book, them talk about this, and then, you know, you're going to play h6 and you're going to hide the king, but no thank you. So by the process of elimination, right, the king g8. So maybe you would arrive at this, but it's much easier with the clock ticking when you just know king g8, right? So when my opponent played into this, I thought to myself, okay, great. I was actually not worried at all. I said to myself, I hope that he goes into it because we're going to have some fireworks, yeah? And here it comes, right? The attack on the queen, only square, and now here it goes, fork, right? This is the whole idea, right? But now queen comes to g1, and he takes a rook, right? So the exchange, and 2 pawns. But now black gets to move. So queen g2, hitting the rook on h1. And again, this king is going to be hanging out in the center. Only one move to save the rook. And capturing. This move is important. Like, this is part of the prepared variation, right? Because you have to clear squares for your knights, right? So this move is important. Takes. And now that's why you had to capture, so that this knight can come to e5, and now the threats start to come. Yeah, this check is a problem. Right. So now f4, guarding against guarding against the fork, because the rook covers f3, and now here it comes, right? So black, this is part of the prepared variation. This is so. It's almost as if you're armed ahead of time. Like, you know this move, f4. You know it's coming, or you know what to do. And actually, so you sacrifice the rook, you sacrifice the exchange, and now you're ready to sacrifice this knight. Yeah, but the idea behind this is that it opens the bishop. And here we have our magic number, right? 1, 2, 3. All right, so our forces are getting activated. So check, queen d5, knight f7. Again, we know what to do because this is a prepared variation. The lines are very concrete, so we know this. Right? And now, he played bishop d2, and after bishop h4, he just resigned because he's getting mated. There's really no way around it, yeah? How does he deal with this check? If he blocks, check. Check. Checkmate. So, yeah. So he resigned here because he's getting mated, and there's no way to stop it. He could give up lots of material. It's not going to help. He's still going to get mated. So what does this leads me to believe that my opponent did not know this prepared variation, because if he did know it, right? Now, there were other moves that he could have played. He could have played better. This move, bishop d2, didn't need to be played, right? There are moves that are better, but even at the end of all of that, his position will still be worse, believe it or not. Yeah? So we won't go into it because it's about 10 moves deep. So I'm led to believe that he did not know this prepared variation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have played into it. Like, why would you knowingly play into a variation where you're going to come out worse? So this is the advantage of knowing, like, this kind of stuff, of doing the work and studying it to catch people out like this. Now, granted, it was a rapid game, so the quality may not be of the best standard, right? But that doesn't matter, right? We're playing chess, and he has to think just like I have to think. So remember, prepared variations. Once you reach a certain level of strength, around maybe 1,200, 1,300, 1,400, like that, your opponents are going to be stronger, and they're going to be studying and booking up. And so you're going to have to do the same, and you're going to have to understand like why these moves are played. Some of them are very counterintuitive. They don't seem to make sense. They don't follow general principles, but you're going to have to learn that and do that work. All right. Okay, guys. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you soon. So, we have reached the end of our journey. Thank you for coming with me through everything that we covered there, and it is my sincere hope that you found something useful, that you learned something, and something that you can apply right away in your games to help you win more games, to help you enjoy chess at a new and higher level than before. And if you want to reach out to me, you want to let me have some feedback, or you have any comments, or you want to see some more, you can hit me up on Chess Sensei on Instagram. All right, guys? So again, thanks a lot. I really enjoyed working with you. I really enjoyed showing this stuff to you, and I hope you have much success. Happy hunting.